Yeah, we're live. Hey, gallery view. There we go. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Coach Rob again. This is episode number 2 of my entrepreneur series where I interview entrepreneurs that I admire and also just happen to be good friends with. And today we're with the Elbert Cuenca.
Wow,
Elbert.
I'm a the. Okay, I'm Elbert. Just call me Elbert.
Okay, I'll take out the, but absolutely you're a the, because when it comes to restaurants, whenever you put up something new, it becomes an event in the country. No, you've developed
Well,
quite a name and quite a reputation for yourself as being a man of quality in terms of the food that you do, the service that you have, and the tech service that you provide to all of us
yeah.
Apple users. But I want to go back. I want to take the audience back to the beginning, how it all started. Albert, can you share with us, were you always an entrepreneur?
Um, I didn't know I was an entrepreneur until I started working professionally. I mean, my first line of work was fun. I was at Club Mars, and I don't know if you could call that work. I was doing marketing for a disco, and yeah, I was drunk almost every night. But we were doing some work to market the place. From there, I was asked by my cousins to assist them in a new project called Zen Restaurant, which is a Japanese spin-off of a long famous family restaurant called Furusato. And that was probably my first foray in restaurant business. And it was quite challenging because I had the same name as the owners of the business, but I wasn't an owner of the business. So you can imagine the challenge of to the market and to my co-employees. I was looked at as somebody who owned the place, who could control the place, who's responsible for the place. When in fact I was just merely an employee, and it was frustrating. And I had ideas that I wanted to do that I couldn't, simply because I had bosses who didn't necessarily agree with them. And I decided to bolt out after 5 years of being in the restaurant and put up my own. And it was quite ballsy because I didn't have resources. I didn't have money to put up a restaurant. I didn't have, a location. I had ideas of how a restaurant should be and how I felt customers should be treated. And before I could get into opening my first restaurant, I took some odd jobs of being like consultants in other establishments. And luckily, I had enough friends and I gained enough reputation from Zen that I had referrals, and I started doing
Yeah,
some consultancy.
sorry about that.
So yeah, and one thing led to another. I ended up before getting into an actual first restaurant business. I was hired by a tech company, uh, technology store. It was the first of its kind. The way you see all these Globe stores today, where you can have all these phones on in front of you and you can touch them, that didn't happen before. But we were the first ones, called Mobile One. We were in Park Square One, where we had all the units live with security cables, and you could play with them. And the reason I was there was because one is I had this knack for technology, and two, the owner of that store decided that he wanted a level of customer service in restaurant level in a technology store, which is also unheard of. Like, why would you do that? Normally, brick and mortar stores like technology, they don't care. It's like they give you a price and you're off. He wanted a store where we understood customers, we could explain the products properly, and we would allow customers to be able to play with these technology products, mostly Palm Pilots and eventually iPods and whatever. One thing led to another. After that, I got parted to a bigger company, technology. We brought in, those products, handheld products. We introduced the iPod to the Philippines, and eventually Apple computers. We were a distributor. But the desire to still be my own man and be out, spread my own wings was in there, and I couldn't resist. My original idea why I left the family business was to put up my own. So from year 2000 to 2002, not that long. Uh, in 2002, I had an idea. I approached Ayala Land. I said, look, I have this fantastic idea for a restaurant. I have a couple of free. So you just put two and two together. You meet chefs, you find this and that, and I came up with a restaurant called Restaurant 12. It was my first business, my first own business. But it was great from 2000, and we didn't reach 2 years, but between the years 2002 and 2004, we were the talk of the town. I was, character Leo DiCaprio in Titanic. I felt I was in the mast of the boat saying, "I'm king of the world." And sure enough, I was also in the Titanic. That business failed. It hit an iceberg. Many things happened from being, the thing about being so popular is you become a target as well. And we were, I remember nights where I felt like a drug lord with cash in my hand because the bar was so busy and cashier couldn't deal with it. So I would just take people's money and give them their beers, whatever. And then the other night I'd have like 150,000 of cash in my pocket, not even knowing if, you know, I'm missing anything. But it was that busy. It was fun too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we were that busy and we were so popular that when, things happened, like a smoking law was introduced in Makati, the very first smoking law in the country. And back then you couldn't have a bar without smoking. And because the then mayor thought to make an example out of an establishment, we were the ones who were caught violating this new smoking law. We were shut down and we never recovered and lost everything. And luckily, um, you know lucky for me, it wasn't really my money. I took someone else's money, and that was, it was his money. This other partner, I said, look, this is just like buying a new car. If you hope that it'll make money for you. If it doesn't, then it's like a car that crashed. And if you're willing to take that risk with me, then let's be partners. And that's what happened. And eventually, because it wasn't making that much money and he was losing, he pulled the plug on me, and me, from being king of the world to being Mr. Nobody. I had to regroup myself. I called back my old contacts. I tried to get a job back. I did for a while in technology again, but I decided I needed to fend. I had to survive. I had to do something to make ends meet because I wasn't able to pay my rent, my credit card, my standard of living had changed, but my income was gone. So it was something that was like quite difficult to match. So what I do is I picked an odd job and I became what I called uh, a personal Mac trainer. I
Right.
saw the need of people who owned Apple computers, and because of my line of work being involved with Mobile One before and the distributor micro warehouse, um, so many people are asking for help. I don't know how to do this. How do I use my Mac? How do I use my Palm and whatever? So, and I found myself tutoring them as part of my job. I was selling products before, and I decided that I would make something out of it. So I said, you know what? If you need help with your Mac, I can go to your house. I'll sit with you, and I took the training playbooks of Apple as my guide, and I would spend 2 hours at a time with students. I would call them students. Essentially, they were mostly desperate housewives. Uh, no, I mean that's a joke, but they were mostly women, middle-aged women who, yes, they were tired of being ridiculed by their kids who wouldn't teach them how to use their computers anyway. So I would be the one to arm them with the information that they could go back to their kids and show, look, I know something you don't. And that was fun because one, I was being paid for something that was so natural for me.
Yeah.
At the same time, it was a lot of money, but my satisfaction wasn't. That's where I discovered that satisfaction shouldn't be derived from the money you receive doing what you do. That the satisfaction came from seeing all these happy people who I had made a little difference in their lives. Kind of, I made them feel more secure, feel more confident about themselves, and they were only too happy to pay me. And to me, in the end, I looked back and I said, none of the money I received was what motivated me. My motivation was, wow, seeing how happy they were, and they were thankful, and they would call me again and call me again, and we'd be a regular thing. And before I knew it, I had so many new friends,
Yeah.
which would later help me in my next stage in life. So there was still this desire to put up a restaurant, and because of the failure of my restaurant 12, I uh, I had all these ideas brewing in my head, and I ended up coming up with a plan that was completely opposite of what I did with Restaurant 12. So Restaurant 12 was a grandiose dream. I thought I had every answer, to every question. How do you market? I had every solution in place. The location, the concept, the look, the feel, everything I felt was perfect. How could it fail? I felt it was a foolproof, sure, venture. Then I was proven wrong. It came crashing down big time, and I realized that the more grand your ideas, the bigger the failure will be. So that was my first taste of failure. I look back and I will always tell people this: failure is your best teacher. You need to be able to embrace it when it comes. You don't wish for it, but you kind of have to prepare for it, because failure is like death and taxes. You will fail at some point in your life, right? But what's important is to learn from it, uh, pick yourself up, and 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 move on, and evolve from that. So everything I did in Restaurant 12, I did the opposite in the steak room. So instead of having 120 seater restaurant, I had one that just sat, 20 to 25 people. I said a dozen people a night would be enough for me to break even. I set my sights really small this time. Instead of being high profile, high visibility, I went low. I mean, I was in the third floor of an old building. You had to know who we were and where to find us. Instead of having a high concept of cuisine, I decided to do just one cuisine, just steaks. And I knew that how could I not be good at steaks if it was the only thing I was doing? And of course, I became an expert at steaks because that's all we did, right? And how did we get started? If nobody knows, nobody sees you. There was no Facebook. There was no way to market yourself before, and I was trying to avoid marketing too, because I felt that too much marketing made me a target for naysayers and critics, and the government as well. I decided to be low key and kind of just keep things small. How did we get started? It was simple. My past came back to me. Everyone I had tutored with their math knew about this venture, and when it was open, I told them, and they all started coming. And word of mouth travels so fast in these circles. And then, in fact, one of my partners in this business was one of my students, the late Archie King. He was the one who invested in me and taught me how to put a business up, and he gave me one of the most important lessons I've ever learned, is that one is I need to own the business. It can't be money from other people, because then have you wouldn't have ownership. I mean, literally, you wouldn't take responsibility for something, because it's the risk is someone else's. For you, it's just reputational, and that's exactly what happened in Restaurant 12. So in Steak Room, I borrowed money from my parents, and I still pay interest to this day. By the way, they're my parents anyway.
Well, it's like Jeff Bezos, right? The
Yeah,
parents lent him money and they got stock. So lucky them. So lucky
yeah.
your parents
So
for you.
So my parents also gambled in me. Although I'll admit this, I was considered the black sheep of the family, the least likely to succeed. And I guess that was also a driving force. I want to prove that wrong. Okay. And I also learned that, I Restaurant 12, I was quite aggressive and quite big headed about the idea. I became modest and humble in my approach with the steak room, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're successful, is because we don't claim to be anything. We don't make noise. It's just we put up something for our customers. I and we're driven by our customer satisfaction. And something I share with all my until now our credo with all my employees in any restaurant I've put up is I tell them to never be motivated by money. I know that's quite difficult to grasp for anyone who's an entrepreneur or anyone who was who's working. But you have to see that money should never be a motivation. Money should just merely be a reward for what you do. Your motivation should be the difference you make in this world, the happiness that you provide to people. I consider myself like an entertainer, and I'm happy to make other people happy. And once I've done my job right, then of course they'd want to pay you. You're not picking their pockets. They're opening it up and their wallets and giving it to you willingly because they were happy with what you've done for them. And that's taking my lessons from being the Mac shooter to the restaurant business. So that's where we are now. So it's been my driving force. It's been my guide. It's how I do things. It's always about examining why am I doing something like this? Who is it for? What's our purpose? What's our end goal? And I'd always have to re-examine and make sure I don't lose, my way, because it has to be that direction and that focus all the time. And yeah, to this day, it's what keeps us successful is the fact that we're there to make people happy and satisfy them. And when you do that, people keep coming back because they want more of it. I mean, who doesn't want to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So
One thing, Albert, that I find interesting, I follow you. So it doesn't matter what restaurant you put up, right? If it's the Japanese, I'll go because I know that your standard of quality is very high. And then when you go to sandwiches, I'll go there. And
yeah,
when you went to pizza, then I'll go there. I'll always follow your food because no matter what you do, it's about your philosophy, which has always been customer satisfaction, make people happy, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I always feel like I get a good deal whenever I go to your establishments.
yeah. I guess there's this thing about used car salesmen. It's the one thing I don't want to be,
Yeah.
right? You can't be proud of a sale wherein the guy drives away, say, "Bye, sucker,"
No way.
I saw it, right?
No.
Because at the end of the day, it's gonna bite you, right? You can only fool so many people. But if you do the opposite, if you had been that great car salesman who sold somebody a car he was so happy with that he likes to drive every day because you gave him a great product, he'll come back to you for his next car. And he'll even tell other people to buy from you, right? Because you sold him what he wanted, what he needed. That's why I'll always, even when we were in Mobile One, uh, there were different Palm Pilots, different models. And the question would always be, which Palm Pilot should I buy? And we would always ask that question was, well, what do you do? What is it you need it for?
Right.
So it would always have to be something that's for you. I can't tell you that the greatest, latest is what you need.
Right.
It's almost like a car salesman saying to a little old lady, "Oh, you're going to Rustans every weekend. Why don't you buy a Hummer?" It doesn't work. When you could buy a really small automatic two-seater and say that's all you need, lady, because you're just buying groceries, right? You gotta tailor it. Fine, you might make less money, but you've made a happier customer, and
Find out.
that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Always find out what it is they need and provide it.
Albert, in listening to your story, there's a lot of entrepreneur lessons. I mean, it starts out when you were working for the family business. You didn't go. Did you go to school to learn how to do?
No, this is all street smart. I'll admit this now. I never finished college. I couldn't wait to get out.
I love it.
Okay,
That's what I
so
college isn't for everyone. You know,
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
not.
I took my lessons from the street, and the disadvantage of not going through college is that you don't have a head start in your position in life, right? I mean, the degree is there to help you get a higher position in any job you
A
apply
job,
for,
yes.
right? But as an entrepreneur, yes, you need to know your math, you need to know economics. I mean, some basic lessons here and there, but it's for me. School wasn't for me. I couldn't wait to get out. I needed to spread my wings. I needed to start, moving because I was so excited to get my life moving, and I felt that school was just holding me back. I don't know. Maybe it's also complex. I thought I knew better than teachers, so I don't know.
Oh, but I mean that's the thing. No, I mean that's one of the traits of an entrepreneur. You want to spread your wings, and you always think I can do this better, or I know more. And we could be right, we could be wrong, but that's
Yeah,
the drive that we have. But where you did learn was working for 5 years in your family restaurant, right? I
yeah,
mean that's where you picked up stuff, and but you did go big very fast. So one advice maybe is don't go so big so fast.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I was rushed. Grandiose dreams, right? I said I knew better than that was also a complex of mine. I felt I knew better than everyone else, and I, the turning point really was two things in my life that were turning points. Was my failure at Restaurant 12
Yeah.
told me that I was wrong, and two, the second biggest turning point in my life, I've probably classified as the biggest because it changed my personality, was Yolanda. And when it hit the Philippines, I had to think about other people. And I realized that whatever problems I had, whatever difficulties I've had, was nothing compared to what people are going through in Yolanda. So that drives me too, right? I mean, I need to understand that the needs of other people, not just my needs. So now it becomes putting other people forward, other rather than myself.
It was interesting when we were having the chat. You were saying if you never failed with Restaurant 12, you wouldn't be a success today. So it was
Most
really,
likely not.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's the biggest lesson. I mean, failure, like I said, failure is going to be your greatest teacher.
yeah.
You have to allow it to be your greatest teacher. Embrace it when it happens. Don't look for it. Don't welcome it. Try to avoid it, but be prepared for it.
Yeah,
Right. I'm not saying expect it. I'm saying be prepared for it. It's two different things, right?
yeah.
uh, you don't want it to happen, but when it comes, you really have to examine every single reason why you failed. But you've got to do it with an open mind and a humble heart. It can't be like, oh, because I did this wrong, I did this wrong. You have to be modest. You have to understand that you failed because you were wrong,
Okay.
not because what you felt was right then didn't apply or people didn't get you. You have to understand.
People don't get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blame.
Some
You don't focus on blaming.
No, you don't blame. You take lessons and then you adopt, you adjust, and then you you work around what you learn, right? So what did I learn? I learned what I was doing wasn't what people wanted. I mean, I thought, hey, how can people not eat in my restaurant? I'm gonna have different chefs hosted. It was a concept of having guest chefs, and I'd rotate them either on a weekend or a week or a month, but they'd always have changes. And you realize when people go to a restaurant, this is the one thing I failed to understand. People go to a restaurant because they want this familiarity. They want to be fed. They want to come back to the good things that they had in your restaurant. But if they come back and it's no longer there, you've lost them forever, right? It's the same guys. My staff are there. I'm there. It's the same restaurant, but you've changed the one thing they came for. It's that experience, right?
Yeah, it's funny. That's why McDonald's, right? When people go to different countries, sometimes they look for McDonald's and go, "Don't you want to try something new?" But yeah, but they want that familiarity. Sometimes they know what to
Yeah.
expect.
For me, that's the lesson I learned. This is another thing I'll always advise is you take example from great successes around the world. Starbucks for me is a great example. Starbucks, I know this is going to sound odd, but Starbucks doesn't really sell coffee. Yeah, they're Starbucks, they're known for coffee. It says Starbucks coffee, right? That's what it is. But they're not selling you coffee, they're selling you an experience, right? You don't realize it, but that's what it is. You walk in, from the moment you enter the door, the smell, the look, the temperature of the aircon, the layout of the restaurant, the color palette, and the moment you get your drink and you sip it, it's just all part of one experience. Then you travel, you go to Hong Kong and you enter a Starbucks, and you know exactly what you were feeling in your store in Makati is exactly what you're feeling again here in Hong Kong. And then you go to Seattle and you realize, wow, where it started, it's exactly the same. What is it? It's the experience. Can you tell the coffee to be any different? You probably weren't even thinking if the coffee is any different because you don't realize it, but you came back to buy back that experience because you want. I mean, I'll go back and apply this to Mobile One, which is similar to how Apple stores are as well. People came to us because it was like a recluse, like a heaven where they can, a haven where they can relate, people who can relate to their needs, and the Cuentuhan, and it was all there. It's like it felt like a community center where you could just chat and learn and feel at home. And to a certain extent, that's what the Starbucks is. Even if you don't talk to anyone, if you just sit in a corner with your latte, you have that experience that you can replicate over and over again. And if it's something that suits you and you look for it, then great. Starbucks will always be there for you. So I applied it to my restaurants as well. I don't believe they come to me just for my steaks. I don't believe they just come to me for the food. The food is the centerpiece of the experience. And without the food, of course, they wouldn't come. But I need to complete the experience. So if I had served you good steak with really lousy service and hot aircon and all, I don't think people will come back. It's just one piece of the entire experience, right? So I feel that's. I mean, it doesn't apply to every restaurant I've had, right? When I was involved with the ramen business, it's the opposite. Our aircon would break down, our exhaust would be busted, but people would still line up for 2 hours, really hungry already, and yet they would come out happy. And that for me is where the food becomes the experience itself. The ramen is that good that it becomes the experience of the customer experience is it's all in one bowl,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter what you did around it. So you this is the things I learned along the way, right? I would always wonder, how can people stand eating or waiting 2 hours for in line for ramen, sit down, eating a hot bowl, sweating it out. You can see the tissue all over the face and whatever, the water drinking nonstop. Walk out smiling. And then you ask them, that was great ramen. And you realize that it's a bowl of umami and it's endorphin inducing. And yeah, the bowl itself is the experience
Yeah.
that they come for. Right. So this is how we learn to adopt too. I can't apply the steak room model into a ramen shop, right? So then we just work around what we learn, what we see as customers' reactions, and when work with that. So you really have to study and know. I mean, you can't get it. You can't be what you think in the beginning will always be what the same thing later on. You've got to observe and adapt to what your customers are doing and learn and understand why they keep coming to you, so that you know what your strength is and you can continue on doing what you do well.
How do you understand? Do you talk to the customers? Do you talk to the?
Yeah, one is, well, okay, for starters is you go through the experience yourself.
Okay.
You need to see it, you need to understand, you have to try it out, whatever it is, whether it's products or food, it's the same thing. You have to understand, for you to be able to sell, like a car salesman. How can you sell a car if you don't know how to drive, right? You can't. If you know the experience and you can share the experience as a person to another person, then you kind of understand now, you know uh, what it is you're selling, right? Then, but not no two persons are alike. Some people have different wants. So you start off with what you feel people will want because you understand what it is you're selling. Next is, you got to see the reaction of the people you're selling to and how they're reacting to it. And then you realize that, yeah, maybe we're not the same, and maybe in many ways we are the same, but you got to take an average now and then multiply that by the number of other people you're serving, and then understanding what it is that they're experiencing compared to what you experience yourself, and then molding something out of that together, because you can't have all the answers, and you can't understand what everybody wants. So you base it on what you understand for yourself, and then compare it with others, and then take everyone else around. So the more you sell, the better for you, because you have a bigger sample to learn from, right?
You've had ideas that you come in with, but has it, like, in understanding your market, you completely changed the direction of your restaurant?
No, there has to be, I guess, this bit of conviction in you, right? You can't just say, oh, because this customer complained about it, I'm changing that. You still have to believe in the core of your product, right? You're not going to change a formula just because someone said, oh, I didn't like this. i- as long as you have that conviction that what it is you're selling, like let's say my steaks, right? I'll give an example. We will literally salt it with Italian sea salt, which I feel is the best. And some people will come to me and say, "Oh, it's so maalat," right? And I'll say, "Oh, well, that's how we really do it." And, and I'll try to educate them and say, "Look, this is the experience of crunching into Italian sea salt, which is not like your typical salt." So there's a misunderstanding where people would think salt is just like the asin you buy in the palenque, right? It's not the same. That I feel is a maalat salt, where the salt we get from Italy is a bit on the sweet side. It's hard to describe, but it's the sensation, right? It's almost like an MSG sensation. In fact, it's almost like Ajinomoto, but it's salt. And so we educate and we try to make them learn. But in the end, if they still don't want to accept that and say, "No, I still don't like biting into salt," they will say, "Look, just scrape it off." So they scrape it off the top, right? Because it's just surface anyway. But I'll still stick to my steak and I'll still stick to my product because that's what I believe. Then you find out later on that one person's opinion wasn't necessarily everyone else's, because nobody else complains about the salt. So this is what I'm saying. It's like, you start with what you believe to be right, and then you examine. If everybody had told me the opposite, if one person said it's perfect and 99 others said it's too salty, of course I'll
Yeah.
adjust.
Yeah.
But my steak will still be there.
Elbert, especially with your steakhouse, I find it so interesting. You don't have a sign. You don't have a
Uh,
sign. It's hard to find.
so so this is funny. This was not by design. That was Here's an interesting part of the story. As an entrepreneur, I put up a restaurant. We overshot budget, which is typical. Uh, but I had no more money to add. So what the solution I found was to, hey, I don't need to complete the entire restaurant. Why don't I open a portion of it? So we had 7 tables in total. We had space for 7 tables. I mean, I bought three, and the 3 tables I bought cutlery for that, plates, glassware, just for the 3 tables. Right? Okay. Of course, it's if it's 3 tables of four was a total of 12 people. I needed extra, so I bought 15 glasses, 15 sets of cutlery, 15 plates, whatever. And what I did was I didn't have money to put up a sign. This is this is the connection to that. I didn't have money to put up a sign, so I said I'll put the sign later on because I'm opening a restaurant that's half big. It's only got 3 tables. It didn't even have a bathroom on the first day. The the bar counter was a piece of wood rather than marble top because we didn't have the money for it. But hey, whoever wants to come, I called my former students. I said, "We're starting to serve. I know we're not yet complete, but come." And it turned out to be a good thing because the word of mouth traveled so fast. We would never had a night that we didn't have customers. They understood what was going on. They saw that it was a work in progress. They saw that there was a bit of a struggle. And because I was an underdog, I didn't open and grande with, full shebang. They saw it was a work in progress. So that there's development, down the line, right? And because of that, almost like I presented myself as an underdog that they had to root for me. So what happened next was they would tell other people, "Hey, why don't you go to this? It's quite interesting. There's no sign. It's up on the third floor, but when you get there, it's a beautiful, elegant restaurant. Don't mind the unfinished parts, but the finished part is good and the steak is good." So then these people became like partners to me because they wanted to see me grow. They wanted to root for me, and that's the opposite of when I did Restaurant 12. But boom, look at this giant, beautiful restaurant. This is the greatest restaurant in the world. And people say, not my type. You know what I mean? You kind of appeal to their senses, and you say, you know, please excuse the fact that we don't have this yet, but I promise you the steaks will be good. And you know what? We started in August of 2007. By December, I had earned enough profit to buy more tables and chairs, more cutlery to complete the restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. By December of 2007, we had completed the restaurant, but I still had no sign. But it was that time because I even if I had money for a sign, I didn't know how big or where to put it because we're on the third floor. How
Yeah.
do I make people know we're upstairs? Do I put please enter, come up to the third floor? I didn't know what to do. But people were coming. I didn't need the sign. You realize you don't need the sign. So this is what I call, adopting, right? We go with what we have, and if we don't need it, why do it? Why do you have to follow uh, the classic formulas? Yes, of course, a restaurant needs a sign. Why can't all of a sudden I'm starting to think, why can't I not have a sign? And later on, I had a customer who came up to the restaurant. She couldn't find it at first, and because we're in the third floor with no elevator, she had gone up and down the stairs, I think 3 or 4 times, because she couldn't find the door. Because that's another thing feature about our restaurant. We don't really have a door. We have a moving wall, so you don't know it's not obviously a door. And if you don't get it, you're gonna say I'm in the wrong place. And back then, nobody would direct you to how to go in, right? And in fact, going up the stairs doesn't look like a very inviting thing because it's an old decrepit building, right?
No building.
I call that a contrast, though. It kind of lowers your expectations. It's a leap of faith when you walk up those stairs. And so this customer, when she walked in, she was flustered, she was frustrated, she was sweating, and I welcomed her in the door and I said, "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the steak room." And she looks at me and she goes, "Why don't you have a signage? Why don't you have a door?" And I said, "Oh no, I have my first angry customer. I haven't even started with her yet, and she's already angry at me, right?" And so I leave her to her food and to her meal. With her husband follows. He was the reason why she was rushing. I realized was because her husband couldn't find parking. It's one of those really difficult situations. They didn't want to lose their reservation. He had to find parking. He couldn't find any parking. There's traffic outside. She couldn't find the door and whatever. So I guess I understand the frustration. She walks in. I let her have her meal. We serve her the way we normally do. We don't make kulit our customers. We leave you to eat in peace. We're there when you need us, and we disappear when you don't need us. We kind of know when you need us, right? And so at the end of her meal, when she was having her dessert, she had called for me. I said, "Oh no, customer calling for me. It's the angry customer." So I'm prepping myself, thinking, "Here goes. I better, be ready for this." And she goes to me, "Elbert, remember what I said about your sign and your door? Keep it that way." And I said, "It it hit me. It it it's what works. It's actually now a feature."
It is. It is.
And so when I say that having no signage and having no door, that wasn't by design. That's just circumstantial. But it becomes a feature, and it becomes one of those uh, you know it becomes part of the journey of every customer, wherein they go to an old building, doesn't look like there's any restaurant in there. You walk up stairs that look like they lead to the wrong place, and you find out there's this place where there's a hint of a restaurant inside, but you can't find the door. And when you open that door, all of a sudden, boom, it's like an oasis. You're like transported to another place, and it's a beautiful experience. That's where the experience doesn't even start. The experience started when you couldn't find the place. So it
Okay.
becomes all part of the journey, right? The experience of eating in my restaurant. And I start you off with some negatives. I lower your expectations.
You know what next?
Yeah. But I'll surprise you with something great when you come in, and then I'll even go further by giving you a great dining experience, right? So it's from going low, and then all of a sudden you go high, high, high. And for me, it's almost like music where there has to be a movement. Like in classical music, it can't be monotonous, same beat all the time. You kind of crescendo at some point, and that's really where the steak comes in.
Yeah. So that was really the foundation. What was next? What came after the steak room?
So the steak room, interesting story about it is we were a dinner only establishment because I felt I could never replicate a steak dinner experience during lunch, right? Obviously, by virtue of sunlight alone, there's no way you can have the same experience. Plus, I felt that nobody's going to have an expensive, heavy meal for lunch. In fact, our meals are 2 hours long, and people are gonna want to rush back to their office. So
Yeah.
I understood that customer traits for lunch was that they have to be cheap, quick, easy, no brainer kind of eating, a little more comfort food side. So we didn't say that we would never open for lunch, but I decided that because of the clamor to open for lunch, and because I knew that we couldn't do the same steak room experience for lunch, I launched what I called steak room lunch. And instead of linen on the table, we would put paper placemats, paper napkins. Okay, I casualized the whole thing, and we served a completely different menu, no steaks. But what we did was we served steak trimmings, because the steaks would always have trimmings. Like a tenderloin is like a club, and when it gets to this little end, it's so pointed that you can't make a steak out of it. So
Okay.
we had set that aside, and over months we had accumulated so much of that we decided to make dishes out of them. So with a menu that had salpicao, beef stroganoff, burgers, and the thing that really hit a lot of people was our cheesesteak sandwiches, a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, right? From the same beef we use for our steaks. All we had to do was buy bread, onions, and put some cheddar cheese on it, and all of a sudden we had a cheesesteak sandwich, right? And these guys from Wharton, because in Philadelphia, right, they would be coming and saying, "Oh my God, it's so good!" And they started telling other guys from Wharton, and they were all coming for lunch because we had this cheesesteak sandwich, and they said, "We can't get any cheesesteak sandwiches in this country." The idea to form a cheesesteak sandwich shop it came about, and I found this nice little spot in Rockville, and that's our first expansion. So we did a cheesesteak sandwich shop 3 years after we opened the steak room. And then it's a different mode. Like it's the mall. It's completely different from what I do with the steak room. So that's where I learned to take more lessons from customers. You have to learn from them, see what they're looking for, see what they like. How do people in the mall behave? You understand now that it's the total opposite of what I do, because the steak room, I make people come to me. Whereas in a mall, they're there generally for the reason of just to eat. They're not looking for you. They didn't seek you out. You weren't a target. You're just one of many, right?
Man,
So
a lot.
yes. So but that's also why you open a mall. It's because they have a market, right? So it worked out well for the first few years, and then a similar restaurant in our row opened, and it stole our thunder because they had wider offerings. So what we were doing was too limited. We started expanding. I put burgers, I put hot dogs, eventually I put other sandwiches. And after 5 years, I decided that it run its course. Maybe I could give it a second chance. And then during that time, that's when someone approached me for a ramen business, right? And he had no experience whatsoever in the food business, and he had been an old friend and a customer of the steak room. I was a fan of the steak room, and he asked if I wanted to partner with him, and I was half-heartedly into it in the beginning because I didn't think that I was a ramen guy. Even if I had steak, Zen and Furusato before, I just felt the ramen thing was completely different from what I like doing. But hey, when had a sample taste of the ramen, because there was an interested party from Japan that wanted to bring it to Manila, and we used the steak room as a proving ground. They would use my kitchen. We were closed on Sundays, right? So they would use the kitchen. They would make ramen. They'd bring the ingredients on the plane with them, and they would recreate the ramen in the restaurant. And at the moment I took my first bowl, I kid you not, tears were rolling down my eyes. That was when I first discovered that food can be emotional.
Really?
Yeah, this is another story to it, but
I've seen the line.
ramen,
I believe.
ramen, ramen is endorphin inducing. Okay, that's what it
Sorry,
is.
say again.
It's endorphin inducing. It's the
Okay.
effect of umami. And yeah, I decided at that moment, I said, shit, I want to be part of this thing, man. So yeah, that's how the ramen business started. But see, along the line, I had by was it 2013? I had the ramen, I had my cheesesteak shop, which I moved to Alabang, and then I had my steak room. And then the ramen became such a busy business that it was taking all my time, and we had I was neglecting the steak room, and uh, we had expanded the ramen to 3 branches. And at some point, and then we moved to open a Japanese restaurant called Kazunori as well. You partnered with the chef who created all the ramen dishes for Yushoken and Mendokoro. And from that kind of, there's a moment where I realized that I had to sit down. I could re-examine again myself and ask the questions: is this what I want to do?
Yeah, you
The
shocked.
money was money was great. It
Yeah,
was fantastic. I could close the steak room and be rich just selling ramen.
yeah.
But I realized that I wasn't happy doing it. It wasn't me.
See, and I asked you because it surprised me when you did that move, which when you sold,
Yeah.
when you
The I like to use this analogy. I mean, if I look at myself as a driver of a vehicle, right? And if I was to choose between a bus with, let's say, 100 passengers versus a train with 1,000, I choose the bus. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be able to choose the road, the journey, step on the brakes when I need to, press on the gas when the time comes. Whereas a train is on rails. I can't choose a route. And the number of passengers in the back, it's huge. It's a scale that I'm not comfortable with. And that's the reason is I shifted. I said I don't want to be a train driver anymore.
yeah,
I can't change the direction of the business. I can't steer it in the way I wanted to. I had partners who we didn't necessarily agree on the same ideas either. And so I asked myself, what for, right? Why am I doing this? Yes, I'm making tens of thousands of people happy every month. Literally, huh? It's like easily 12 to
I've seen the
15,000
lines.
people a
I
month.
understand. I've seen the lines.
But it wasn't that kind of, I felt no connection with my customers. And I know. So uh, I compared to my steak room and my sandwich shop, I felt I could connect with my customers better there, right? So that's why I decided to sell.
You know,
A lot of people don't get it, but it's not everything. Like I said, not everything is money, right? It's
and that's the thing about the entrepreneur. You have a vision. You have a vision, and it's personal. It's not just money. You're trying to create something. You're trying to leave something behind. Can we talk about the sandwich shop? Because I also want the team to know, right? My guys to know that it's not all success.
yeah,
Because you took, I was so excited when you came to Alabang because that's our area, right?
yeah,
And so you took the cheap steak shop, you moved it to Alabang,
yeah.
and that wasn't, it didn't work out for you. Or
It
what?
I felt I could move to Alabang because that's when we opened Yushuken in Alabang,
Yeah.
and I felt that no, there should be a market here in Alabang because they were coming in droves at Yushuken, and so I said, okay, let me open in Alabang, and I found a mall that had really good offer for rent. Okay, so I said, okay, low risk. I'm learning my lesson from Restaurant 12. I don't want to take this rental pressures. We had a great deal on a brand new mall. It was a mini mall, smaller than Rockwell, actually a fraction of Rockwell, right? And I'm thinking, okay, and we should be able to cater to the Alabang residents because we're within reach, right? But they wouldn't come,
Unless it
and
was a good movie.
unless there was a good movie, but still, it wasn't enough, right?
Yeah.
So our peak days were when there were blockbusters of
Yeah.
movies and on weekends. But the lesson I learned there was number one, Pinoys in general still don't look at a sandwich as a meal. And this is exactly why Jollibee has a chicken joy and spaghetti. Why even a Greenwich will have, some ulam, right? And McDonald's has to do chicken as well because they'll never look at that hamburger as a meal. A sandwich is a snack in general. Okay, so that's the Pinoy mentality. And then number two, I just realized that in Alabang, it's a lazy market. They're spoiled, right? So why was my neighbor Army Navy doing so well with similar products like its burritos and you know and the burgers as well? why are they so successful in the same building? And then I realized they were doing delivery. It
Yeah.
was all delivery. Um, there wasn't a walk-in market, which I was hoping for, because I felt my sandwiches wouldn't travel well. If they were the disparity of the quality of dine-in versus takeout was so different. I didn't want, just like ramen, I didn't want to ruin a reputation by giving into people's demands. Oh, I want to eat it at home. I said, no, you want to eat it the way we believe you should eat it. In its best quality, right? So it didn't work out. And after about 5 years or 4 years, I decided to close shop. But
That's
you know,
long.
my
It's long.
but
You thought.
yeah, I had partners who in my steak room business, I had partners who still believe in that project, in the product. And they said, why don't you go back to Rockwell? Because that's who we are. We're bagay there. That's our market. And and even if we just break even, it's fine with us because at least, we make people happy. And I love that they agree with me with this direction, with this, the motivation is to make people happy, right? So as long as we make people happy, it's okay if we break even. And I said, fine. I felt that I didn't want to do it because I have a commitment also to some investors, right? To make money for them. But if I hear from my investors and they say it's okay to just break even, okay, fine. So we moved again and we moved back to Rockwell. And when we started, wow, our first 2 months we were like, oh my God, we're happy to be back. We had queues, and our turnover was 3 times that of any of our neighbors, and it was crazy. And then after 3 months, I'd say it just boom, it just went like a roller coaster. We were riding so high and so fast, and then we just went down, and then it was low. It wouldn't go up again. So what did I do? I had to reconfigure. I had to figure out what is it that people. I mean, I guess I go back to that notion that Pinoys in general still don't see it as a meal. They're not enough, and we felt naman there was enough uh, foreigners in Rockwell to sustain us, but it really wasn't enough. And there's only so much sandwiches you can eat, right? You still want to eat other stuff, right? And so we built around what we had, and I consulted my metronome partner. So by the time I had been working on a new business with a new group called Metronome, a French restaurant, and we were meeting in my sandwich shop, and I said, guys, I have two choices here. Either I sell out and sell tapsilog because that's what people want to eat, or I close shop. And they said, you know what? Why don't you just convert this? It looks like a diner anyway, and just call it Elbert's Diner. And I said, wow, it was the answer to everything because we could keep our sandwiches and we could sell tapsilog because it's a diner.
I didn't notice that subtle shift, but
Yeah,
you're right.
because we took a lesson from Magnolia Nestle. You remember when they shifted Magnolia to Nestle? The logo hardly
Change.
changed,
The same
right?
look.
They had this little blue box, the blue outlined white box, right? In the middle was Magnolia, and on top was a small Nestle. One day they changed it to Nestle, and nobody noticed, right? We did the same thing. Our logo was the same. I just changed the part that said sandwiches or sandwich to diner. But it's exactly the same logo. So the restaurant looked the same. We just added offerings. We put tapsilog, we put mac and cheese, we put chili bowl and whatever other things that we felt that we weren't trying to be, literally like a classic American diner, but the concept of a diner is where you come for easy grubs, right? Easy grub. That's what we did. So yeah, and since then, our our average check is doubled because they're now buying meals, and and our customer number doubled as well. So really happy.
You shift fast. Now, again, because of time, we're coming up to the
Yeah.
hour already, but I wanted to ask May 16th,
Okay.
shut down.
Okay.
How did you adjust mentally? How did you cope? And
So it was difficult. Panic mode. I mean, the way the 16th came was we were confused. There's so many different, you know, word coming out about curfew and
Yeah.
whatever. We didn't understand what was going to happen.
2016. Yeah.
So before that, there were ideas already of how we're going to uh, you know adjust, cope, deal, whatever. And I had so many ideas, but I had to think about, of course, number one is you don't want to close down. You still need your income stream, and then the moment the 16th happened, um, I had to figure out which of my businesses are applicable and which aren't. And luckily, I had pizzeria already, and pizzeria was positioned perfectly because one, we weren't in a mall. We were in a standalone shop. Two, Salcedo Village is a village. So we're like a neighborhood shop that can operate independently of the building being locked down, right? Because we were on the sidewalk, we're in an arcade. Three, pizzas. They're portable. They eat anywhere. You don't need cutlery or plates, right? So it was a perfect pandemic food, okay? So I was lucky that at least one of my businesses can survive and go through this whole ECQ thing, right? And so we just had to beef up our delivery because we used to have a lot of people dining in and picking up. That's the core of our business. And with ECQ, it's a shift. Everybody wants to eat at home because they're not supposed to leave their houses.
You have to. Yeah.
So we tried to operate our diner as well, thinking that the mall had to be shut down, but we knew that Rockwell is a village of tall buildings. You multiply each floor by how many, and you have thousands and thousands of people.
Tens of thousands. How many?
How many residents are in Rockwell? It's thousands, right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking they all have to eat. They're not gonna, So I offered to deliver by foot to every apartment, and I didn't really. I don't know. Maybe there was people were scared to go out to pick up their food, and they're afraid that food might be contaminated. I don't know. It just we didn't have we didn't have any volume. So after a couple of weeks, it was a futile effort. I said, let's just shut down the diner. And besides, I had a problem getting people to work because there was no transport, and we had staff who want to work but didn't have transport. We had staff who were afraid to work because of the virus.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge. So I said, you know what, let's just keep pizzeria open. Luckily, I had staff in pizzeria who, the moment lockdown happened, asked if they could sleep in my steak room since it's closed anyway.
Smart.
And there's a bathroom where they can shower and everything. I don't know. Don't ask me about their underwear though, but at least they shower. So I gave them some housing. They're like OFWs. They haven't been home since this all started, 2 months, right? And so I said, yeah, sure. Turn on the aircon, watch TV, and sleep in the restaurant. But let's keep our pizzeria open. And pizzeria did a huge turnaround because of this. So I'm lucky because the pizzeria. I'll be honest here. The pizzeria got off to a very slow start. I thought it was going to be a big hit like ramen the moment I opened, but it wasn't. And so, yeah, just like the sandwich shop and diner, right? You have to figure out why. And one was, okay, we didn't have tables and chairs for the counter. So when I changed it to tables and chairs, all of a sudden people are coming in to eat. You understand that's how people want to eat. They don't want to face a wall or stand up when they eat. They want to sit down and converse. Eating is still a social experience, right? It's a social exercise. And then two was uh, where was I? I mean, why the delivery? People wanted delivery, and we didn't have it, so we did Food Panda, whatever. So when this pandemic hit, when the ECQ came in, we all of a sudden were like the busiest restaurant in all of Salcedo, simply because I felt people were looking for. I mean, there were still a lot of fast foods that were open, but hey, we stayed open and we put the word out. And boom, crazy. We didn't have enough. Uh, and luckily, uh, we had staff and we had supplies. We had one supplier who stayed open for us.
Wow. One
There,
thing I
yeah.
respect was that during this whole thing, you were there in the restaurant. You were folding boxes. You were delivering the pizza.
I had to. We were short on staff.
Yeah.
we boxes needed to be folded. I had to learn to fold boxes, and I guess it kind of helps motivate your staff when your boss is folding
Absolutely, yeah.
boxes.
That's what
Because the last thing I'll do is cook a pizza because I'll screw it up for sure. At least with a box, I can wing it, right?
pull the box.
Yeah, and so yeah, luckily for pizzeria, it's applicable, but other businesses like Metronome isn't applicable, like the steak room during a pandemic. Because, like I said, we sell experiences. We can't box that experience and send it to your house and take it out, right? Can't deliver that. So, but the shift becomes this. Um, your natural reaction is, I gotta think of the business, right? I can't lose my business, and you're starting to think that. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it that you can't lose your business? And then you realize that you have family involved here, your own staff, and then the shift becomes that. Then you start to have to wonder and worry about your employees. And I recall when I had to break it to my staff that you might not be coming to work. I was teary-eyed because I felt for them. They come to me for a reason. They come to me because I can help them provide for their families. I give them the opportunity, right? And to me, they're like family because I won't have a business without them too, right? So we work together. We have a common goal, and they understand what we're trying to do. And here, they get dealt an empty hand, and it's like, what are we going to do? So the shift now becomes from trying to keep the business afloat and save the business to helping our families, right? Our employees. So what pizzeria was doing was not making money. Pizzeria was providing a means to keep payroll going, to fund. Our immediate thought was, let's release 13th month pay early on in advance. They'll be still be with us at the end of the year anyway. So let's give them half. At least there's some cash. Let's pay their salaries until the 15th before the shutdown, right? And then you start thinking, what else can we do? So in terms of my Elbert's businesses, only one was operational. I have a bar called Elbert's Upstairs Bar. That's not going to open for a while, right? Luckily, I only have like 3 employees there. So how do we help our employees? So I talked to my staff and I said, guys, you're lucky to be able to work. You have daily income, and there's in addition to that, the service charge, right? We 10% of what we sell is service charge. I said, you guys, are you okay with giving the service charge to the rest of the staff, equally distributing it, just so that everybody has money? And of course, of course, yeah, let's do it. So this pizzeria is the sole provider of all my employees right now. It might not be minimum wage, but it's close to it. It's enough money to help them survive. So we distribute what we earn a service charge. We redistribute it like as if everybody worked. Because normally service charge is attendance based, right? If you don't work, you don't have service charge. Now, because you're all forced to be on leave, and then we also paid for everyone's leaves. That was another thing. Um, we're generous. If you've been with me for a while, you have 21 days of leaves a year paid. And what we did was we said, look, we're going to advance your leaves. I'll give you all 21 days. That's why during the first 2 weeks or the month, it wasn't really hard for them. But when it got extended, it became a
Yeah,
problem. That's when we shifted to service charge.
that's a tough one.
And so Metronome and my other restaurant, what we did too was we put up a business called Lazy Oof. Okay, so it's a play on words. Oof is French for egg. So our logo is a little slurping egg and whatever. But it's a plain words because the British say you lazy oaf. You don't want to stand up and get your food. So yeah, the whole point was we created a business that was kind of related to Metronome, but wasn't Metronome because we don't want to disturb the identity of Metronome, right? It's all about an experience of dining out with plush velvet and this. This is where I am right now, though. By the way, in Metronome, that elegance can't be transported, and we don't want to disturb the identity by saying, "Oh," and our food is plated, artistic creations. You can't put that in a box. So we decided to make food that we refrigerate, we send to you. You reheat at home. It's kind of French based. It's delicious. It's easy to reheat, easy to eat. And we did that not because we needed to make money again, but because we needed to find some source of income for our staff. So the business was put up solely to generate income for our staff. So all profits go to our staff.
Fantastic.
And then along the way, I'll add this, along the way, any scrap we had or any food that we found in our chillers that were going to go to waste if we didn't cook them, we sent to frontliners, and we still do that. We still send to frontliners, so we still need to do our part too.
Thanks. Albert, man, I got to wrap this up, but I
Yeah.
want to take the opportunity. Would you like to invite everyone to um, where they can buy
Oh,
food, what's open?
the Elbert's Pizzeria. I mean, you can just search on Facebook. Anything Elbert's will appear. Lazy Oof. I know it's quite challenging to spell. OEUF. Lazy Oof. Okay. If you want to buy, higher level cuisine for your house, and I'm about to launch something new in a week or so. I'll announce it now. It's called Elbert Delivers, and
Wow.
it'll be it's us evolving. We need to evolve. We need to adapt. See what's going on. See how people are behaving. The past 2 months, I've been thinking about what I can do to continue to make people happy throughout the lockdown. And it's changed the way people behave. More people are open to eating at home, but they still want good food. So we're going to be launching a business soon wherein we'll be delivering not just my brands, but other curated brands as well in one
Wow.
portal.
Okay.
It'll be easy. It'll be an experience, and it'll cater to people who are my customers and staying at home.
To summarize, I mean, I'm looking at the marketing story here. It's how you build the relationships by being tech support, meeting the right
Yeah,
people. And
yeah,
these are the people who followed you in all your restaurants all the way through, no?
yeah. Yep, they're still my friends. They still support, and in life, all the dots connect, man. Sometimes you have to be the one to connect it, but all those dots will connect.
I do have one question though. Did you ever feel sorry for yourself in this whole journey at any point?
Uh, nah, I don't think feeling sorry for myself was it. I was down. I was pride hurt. When Restaurant 12 failed, that was the most painful thing because I was so mayabang. I was like exactly like Leo DiCaprio. Imagine that feeling of
Yeah.
being in that mass, spreading your arms and saying "King of the World," and then boom, you hit an iceberg, right? Can you imagine that feeling? And then trying to swim out of that, right? And survive.
Being that high and then going back down, not too many people get back up again, you
But
know?
but but that I would say is really just motivation. You need to find your way. I mean, look, I was behind on my rent. I was behind my credit card bills after the restaurant 12 closed. I had to eat my pride and ask my wife to pay the bills. This macho guy asking his wife to pay the bill. I mean, you have to do it. It's survival, right? But you have to turn it into something. You can't
Yeah.
just say this is who I am now. You have to take it uh, and learn from it and use it as an opportunity to do something else.
Right. And you are not defined by that moment. By the way, Albert, to let my wife pay all the bills is my goal. That's really what I'm hoping for. And I keep teasing her.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
she makes a bajillion more than me, I'm okay with it. I'm perfect. Yeah. And with that, but I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
I learned a lot, and let me know when Albert's delivery,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
definitely
and
enjoy your pizza. And I look forward to going to Metronome soon when
yeah.
it's open up.
Thank you, Coach Rob. If we could help inspire anyone out there, I mean, that's exactly why I did this, right? If people want help and ideas, and they can always, hey, message me and just ask me a question. I don't mind helping people.
Okay.
Just take it easy, though.
No,
I'm not Coach Rob.
I do want people to also to know this because I think it's a known fact that you are the first iPhone owner in the Philippines, right? I mean, for me, that's
Documented. Documented. Yeah.
first documented iPhone user.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I have trouble, you always help me out. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
Albert,
Hey,
thanks, man.
great.
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it too. Okay.